today I'm going to be discussing G.R. Elton's idea of this revolution in government that apparently occurred in Tudor England in the reign of Henry VIII, especially under Cromwell, Thomas Cromwell, not Oliver Cromwell. And there's typically, ranges from 1532 to 1540, because that's the period Cromwell was Lord Chancellor. But honestly, I'm just going to say it up front, I do believe there wasn't an revolution. I believe it was more like an evolution. So let's get started. So I'm going to go over all the factors, and then I'm going to group my argument together, if that makes sense. So first of all, finances. Well, aspects of finances that Cromwell introduced include the Court of Augmentations in 1536, which really handled money from the church and administered monastic properties. But this was really built on Wolsey's Court of Chancery. So, rather than, it's not really revolutionary. Then the Court of First Fruit and Tenths in 1540, well, it collected money that had been sent to Rome. But this wasn't really, I don't think this was revolutionary, because in the Reformation Parliament, the Act of First Fruit and Tenths already started the collection of the First Fruit and Tenths. So, yes, this court was established, but it wasn't really anything revolutionary. Then the Court of Wards and Liveries in 1540 established to administer feudal dues, and then collect revenue from, like I said, wardships and liveries. But this, the court itself wasn't in place, but this idea of feudal dues and collection of this type of money was present under even Henry VII. He was really, really keen on using feudal dues to gain revenue. So this wasn't exactly revolutionary. It was there 80 years before. So that's not really revolutionary, is it? And then the Court of General Surveyors, 1540, they handled the confiscated monastic lands. Now, this can be argued to be revolutionary because, well, monastic lands, it was a new policy, so I can guess that was kind of revolutionary. But it was set up in 1540, and then the whole dissolution of the monasteries really kind of all started with Wolsey when he made sure that 30 religious houses closed. But it all started in 1533 when the idea was implanted, and then 1534 it first started coming into law. 1535 the Velo Ecclesiasticus, then 1536 the first act of the dissolution of the monasteries, then 1539 the second act. So this Court of General Surveyors, yes, it was a new thing, but was it just to consolidate everything that the monasteries had achieved, the closure of the dissolution of the monasteries had achieved? Or was it just I don't believe it was revolutionary. It was bound to happen, but not revolutionary. So yeah, as you can see, in terms of finances, it wasn't really revolutionary. Then in terms of the Privy Council, well, the Privy Council was reduced to, I don't know the number before, but it was reduced to 19 members. The men obtaining, it didn't go that you obtained titles because you had lands and offices. Not lands and offices, lands and titles. Let me repeat that. So you didn't get offices because you had lands and titles. No. You obtained lands and titles because you held offices. So Privy Council was they had to hold office so they could have power, essentially. But that was the case with early Henry VIII too. Well, members were expected to attend regularly and had to act as a collective, so they had to work as a whole, and everything really had to be unanimous, because they would sign anything as one, as a Privy Council. And well, the letters were legal instruments that didn't really need any further validation by the Privy Seal or the King's stamp. So, but the Oldham Ordinances in 1526, already implemented by Wolsey, restricted the size of the Privy Council. Cromwell just built on them. And it was more of a centralized, hold-on government, but Wolsey had already started this. And, well, you can't really put together courtiers and councillors in the same group, because it's really not the same thing. And the Privy Council, in the Privy Chamber, they got power from the king, not Cromwell. So not really revolutionary per se. So as you can probably see, okay, so at the beginning it was around 50 to 60 men, but like then it went down to 19. That's the number, sorry. So you can probably see like it all started with Wolsey. Reform of the Privy Council started when Wolsey wanted a more centralized style of government, which he did achieve. But even with Wolsey, he wasn't really revolutionary. It was just like ambitious and not really revolutionary. So again, I'd argue that the Privy Council reforms Cromwell implemented weren't really revolutionary. They just built on Wolsey's. Then the royal household. Well, I mean, that just links in with both finances and the Privy Council, so I'm not really going to talk about it. Because it relied on the king. It just went along with what the king wanted. The idea of a personal monarchy, which that's nothing new. Yeah, the royal household, not anywhere. Like, I wouldn't use it to argue the revolutionary government. Then comes royal control over the kingdom, and this, I 100% agree, it was revolutionary. No other monarch before had done this. So, well, the Council of the North was established in 1537. Now, with Henry VII, they had been traveling York. And, well, with Henry the 8th, especially at the beginning, there was also travel with York. So, in 1537, Cromwell successfully implemented the Council of the North to control York and also, like, handle, like, northern territories, obviously. So, travel could be suppressed, and it replaced a temporary council that was also set up by Cromwell. And separatism was replaced with centralization. So, I mean, it was kind of like, now the North is under the control of London. Because the North had really been less under the control of the Crown, seeing as it was further away from London. So Council of the North, definitely revolutionary. Then, the most revolutionary of all, I'd argue, the Council of the Marshes of Wales. So, the Council of the Marshes of Wales, anything to do with Wales. 1536, this council was implemented after the Act of Union of 1536, which meant that Wales was now under English law and had even had representatives in English Parliament. So now Wales and England was one. And first of all, nothing like this had really happened. Wales had been previously under the control of the English, but no real representation in Parliament. And it really secured a large piece of area that was really good for farming. So that was really revolutionary. That's nothing like that happened before. And also, Wales remained part of the Union until today. It's still in the UK. So this was all because of the Act of Union in 1536. Not to be confused with the Act of Union in 1707. That's with Scotland. Not really relevant here. So, in terms of the Council of the Marshes in Wales, lordships some were dissolved and some were annexed into Welsh and English counties. Others were divided into 5 counties, and even they established JPs modeled after English law. Now, JPs are nothing new. They were implemented under Henry VII, but you have to note this type of controlling Wales, an extra territory, had never been done before. So it's extremely revolutionary. Then Calais in 1536, it was provided with 2 parliamentary political representatives. At this point, Calais was under the control of the English, because it was later lost by Mary I. But by this point, Calais is under the control of the English. And I wouldn't say the control in Calais was revolutionary, but they now had representatives in Parliament, which was nothing, it was new, nothing had been like this had been done before. And then in Ireland, Cromwell really wanted to enforce English authority in the Pale. Now, this is not really revolutionary because, control didn't really extend past the Pale, and nothing really happened. The Pale was kind of controlled, but then, Ireland was not really a huge deal. There was problems with Ireland in the 1530s and 40s with the Earl of Kildare, but that's not, Ireland is not really revolutionary in that sense. The most revolutionary, you have to really make note is that the central government really took control over other areas of England, I guess, especially Council of the North and Council of Wales, the Welsh Marshes. Those two, extremely revolutionary, I'd argue. Then comes, there was also an attempt to control, I missed this, sorry, an attempt to control local government in 1536, in which the abolition of franchises and liberties was introduced to try to make inroads into local feudal jurisdiction. Well, I don't really have any evidence on how that really changed things. So if you have to argue this, I'd argue that the Council of the North and Wales. Those are the 2 points you have to mention here. Then in terms of Parliament. Well, I'm gonna skip Parliament for a second. I missed this principal secretary. Now this is kind of, if you're gonna argue this, I'd argue in the same point as Parliament and Privy Council. More on my points later. But the Royal Seal has really lost significance as functions of the Privy Seal were now taken over by Cromwell, because now he was Lord Privy Seal. But that's just taking over the control. That's nothing new. And Cromwell was sending his own letters rather than using the seal. But this personal style of a chief minister, that sounds familiar. That's Wolsey. That's literally what Wolsey did. So not really relevant. I mean, relevant, yes. It was evolution, but starting and stemming from Wolsey. And he had control over everything from finance, home and foreign affairs, to defense and religion. I mean, not for Wolsey exactly, but here it's because the King's Great Matter hadn't really started then. But then foreign policy, definitely Wolsey. Finance, definitely Wolsey. Definitely. And home, domestic policies, definitely Wolsey. So, this function really evolved, but it was all based on Wolsey. And then finally, Parliament. So, the whole, principal secretary, not really revolutionary because it was all based on Wolsey. And then Wolsey's idea wasn't really new. He just exploited his opportunities. And then Parliament. Well, Parliament it met in Henry's rule just a bunch of times. I forgot the exact number. And it was instrumental in passing the break with Rome and this royal supremacy. But it was just fulfilling the king's needs and, not really revolutionary government because, Cromwell was involved in passing religious legislation because, the question is, under Cromwell, it was Cromwell who did this revolution. But honestly, I would, Parliament wasn't really revolutionary. It was, fulfilling the king's needs. And then after the whole break with Rome, which finalized in 1533 and 1534, nothing really, happened with Parliament in terms of, reaching that level of significance. So it was useful at the beginning of the period, but not really by 1540. So you can't really argue that. And that's Parliament, essentially, not really revolutionary. So those are my points. So, a little summing up. Finances, not revolutionary, based on Wolsey's finances and Henry VII's finances. Privy Council, again, Cromwell did base a lot of stuff on Wolsey. He did work under Wolsey, so that's why you could give it to that. So, Privy Council, not real revolutionary, again, based on Wolsey. Royal household, not really relevant. Royal control over the kingdom, definitely revolutionary, especially in the north and in Wales. Then in Calais and in Ireland, somewhat relevant, but, and then local government, not really, not really that much. Then, in terms of Parliament, also not really revolutionary because it was only significant, especially in the Reformation Parliament. That's it, and that was only from 1532 to 1540. And then Principal Secretary, again, ties in with Cromwell's role, but that was, again, based on Wolsey. So, in terms of writing an essay on this and even structuring it properly, my 3 points would be, say the question is, to what extent was there a revolution in government in the Tudor government from the period of 1532 to 1540, which, again, is a short time period, so I doubt any question like that could come up. But if that was the question, I put it 3 points. I would disagree with the statement, and I'd say, point 1, the worst elements of revolution, and I put my first point, Council of the North and Council of Wales. So local government control. I put JPs were established, the whole abolition of franchises and liberties, allowing the crown to make inroads into local feudal jurisdiction, Council of the North, Council of Wales, and just explaining that, mentioning Calais and Ireland. That would be my agree paragraph. Then I would mention finance. No, not finance. So Parliament and the Privy Council. And you could mention either one because they're both as significant as the other. But here you would argue how the Privy Council restrictions had already been implemented under Wolsey, and yes, he did develop some of the policies, but the change wasn't as radical. So it was more of an evolution in the role of in the Privy Council. And then in Parliament, you would argue that, well, it was only really significant in terms of the time period from 1532 to 34, sorry. So not really after 1540, so you can't really argue that. So I'd put that in that paragraph. And then in the next paragraph, I'd argue finance. You can switch them around. And I argue that, the feudal dues, that's completely based on Henry VII, and Code of Augmentations based on Wolsey. General Surveyors is the only revolutionary thing I can think of. Of course, the first fruits and tenths, that had already begun to be collected. Yeah, not really revolutionary, just kind of evolutionary. So I would disagree with G.R. Elton. He's not entirely wrong, but definitely you can't really use the word revolutionary to describe Tudor government in the period. I'd use evolutionary, or evolutionary is the best term to describe it, because Cromwell did change stuff, but he really based a lot of this stuff on Wolsey and some aspects even on Henry VII. So that's pretty much it. That's the debate. It's a complicated debate, I'm not gonna lie. It's taken a while to finally set in the points and know what I'm gonna argue. But once you get to the point, it's really that. Local jurisdiction, finance, and Parliament and Privy Council. So that's pretty much it. I hope you found it useful, and hope you enjoyed it. Bye.